everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Charlene. I'm the co-leader here at KOP Force. We are really excited for our session today. We have Christian Belko.
I'm now having it.
Christian is a solutions architect at Silverline, and he's going to be talking about Einstein. So,
nice. Thank you very much, Charlene. And thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. This is probably going to be the best Salesforce user group presentation you'll see in December of this year. So that everybody's very excited for a fun night here tonight. This is the holiday episode of user group presentation, so we do have some gifts, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. But first, just a little bit of background on me. For those of you who don't know me, as Charlene mentioned, I'm a solution architect with Silverline. I work in our managed services group. So think of that like for Salesforce implementations, you might have a professional services group do the implementation. My team then comes in at the end of that, and we continue on the journey with clients. So we build that roadmap. That's always phase 2 and things that you talk about in implementations. That's what we get to build. So we work in primarily the financial services, the healthcare, and the media and entertainment industries. So we also recently just acquired. So we'll have more information on what our user group or what our company looks like next year. But for now, I'm loving life and loving what I do as far as in my career. 9-time certified Salesforce professional. I'll talk about my latest certification in a little bit. The one that's eluding me for application architect is Platform Developer 1. So my plan is to get that in 2024. That's one of my resolutions. 12 years in the Salesforce ecosystem. Many of you I've known from other different user groups, other user group meetings. 5-time presenter at Dreamforce. I've been to Dreamforce a number of different times. I did 3 of those 5 presentations in one Dreamforce. I would not recommend that to anybody. If you get picked for 3, just do 1 and be happy with it, but you're good to go. And I've attended about 100 plus local meetups and events. So I don't think they make a trailhead badge for that yet, but once they do, look forward to getting that one moving forward. So what are we going to talk about tonight? Well, we're going to talk about getting started with Einstein 1. What does that look like? We're going to talk about how to succeed in AI without really trying. We're going to go and do a random walkthrough things I didn't know about Einstein 1, how to win friends and influence change with AI. We're going to do the 7 habits of highly effective admins learning AI. We're going to think and grow rich with your future skill set, and we're going to do a wrap up in QA. Some of you who are giggling probably realize that's the title of some famous business books or learning books or things like that. That will also be part of our theme as we get into the presentation a little bit. So we're going to get started, but before we do, I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here tonight. A lot of you are coming after work. For those of you who aren't here at the CRM Science office, you probably had to drive over in King of Prussia traffic or turnpike traffic or other traffic getting here. You probably have a lot of other things on your time. So I really appreciate you being here, and the user group really appreciates you taking the time to get into it. So hopefully coming out of tonight's presentation, you'll learn a few new things that you can take with you on your journey in Einstein 1. So let's talk about getting started. And the hardest thing about getting started, I know I throw a dog in like the 3rd slide, but just to win some things, win some, I guess, kudos with the crowd here. Starting is really the hardest thing about learning with Einstein 1. As you start to learn some of the different things about what the platform can do, about AI, about some of the new tools that they're going to have, there's going to be a lot, and we're not going to cover it all tonight. We would probably need to have a sleepover and sleeping bags and a bunch of other things. That's just not going to happen. I don't think anybody wants to hear me snore. So we're going to cover a lot, and there's going to be a lot of good information. So I just want you to keep an eye out on my dog, Fozzie. Fozzie is going to have some links that will be in this deck to other training materials and other information, trailheads, knowledge articles, other things you can read after. So I'm not going to cover those things tonight, but you'll see those links as we go through. You don't have to like take a camera phone picture of the link or scan a QR code. I'm going to make this deck available, and Charlene will have it tomorrow. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn if you don't see that deck, and I'll be happy to send you over the link so you can take a look at that. Fair? Cool. Cool. I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to see everything in tonight's presentation. So when we talk about getting started with Einstein 1, we're talking about a couple different things. And essentially, Salesforce has rebuilt Data Cloud, which used to be known as Salesforce CDP, along with some of the Einstein capabilities that create a native unified framework. Now, what does the Einstein 1 platform is going to look like? And these changes, along with a series of product updates, is designed to make AI easier to update. And if you don't know a lot about AI, great. We're going to talk about AI a little bit tonight, too. But essentially, they're going to allow you to do a number of different things within the Einstein One platform to take advantage of your data or data outside of the system. And we're going to show a graphic in a second of what that all looks like to be connected. Where you can have that information kind of readily available for you and your users. So when we talk about what that looks like, this is kind of the model on what we're looking at here. So think of your CRM today as that center column. Most of you are using one of the different clouds that are in there. Some of you might be familiar with some of the industries tools that are available. You might be using MuleSoft to bring in data, or AppExchange. You might have Slack enabled or Tableau or some of the other things there. These two pillars on the end between Data Cloud and Einstein are really what's creating the Einstein One platform and linking all those things together. So when we think about Data Cloud, you heard the big announcement at Dreamforce this year. Salesforce is making Data Cloud free. Yay, that's great. But they're only allowing you to do it with about 30,000 records, which, yay, that's great, but oh, it's only good for a proof of concept. It's not great for a large-scale production type implementation, but it is great to show off what it can do. So if your client or your company wants to buy up and use Data Cloud for some of these different things with Einstein, they can do that. With Einstein, there's now what's called the Einstein trust layer that you see here, which is going to allow you to make those different types of AI decisions that we're looking at. Some of you are familiar with some of the AI capabilities Salesforce already has today. We'll talk about those predictive AI things in a little bit. But you can also start to use this Einstein trust layer to look at Gen AI or generative AI. For some of the things that your applications may want to build going forward. So this whole platform that you see here, the Einstein One platform, is not going to be something that a lot of customers have right away. And we're going to talk about in a little bit, how do we help them get there? How do we help them figure out what they need to look at moving forward? Before I get too far into some of the other things with Einstein AI, we want to talk about how to succeed in AI without really trying. And there's really two main types of AI for those of you who haven't worked with it before. There's predictive AI. So if you're familiar with Einstein lead scoring in Salesforce, opportunity scoring in Salesforce, if you're familiar with some of the other capabilities of predictive AI, if you used other tools or apps or things like that, predictive AI basically looks at your historical data, it looks at the patterns from that data, and then it makes predictions about the future. So that's the one that's using a lot of structured data to be able to make those decisions. Generative AI kind of looks at your deep learning and your algorithms, and that's going to generate content based on what you see. So for those of you who have seen like all these images that are being generated on Google now through generative AI, or if anybody here is a fan of the John Oliver show, where it has John Oliver in a cabbage with all these different generative AI pictures that are whatever you type in and want the Gen AI to create, it's going to use a series of algorithms as well as deep learning from a lot of different unstructured data. So it's going to compare thousands or in some cases millions of different images or results to be able to pull those different things together. And generative AI, the big thing a lot of people talk about is ChatGPT. Is anybody in here using ChatGPT yet? Is anybody in here using ChatGPT for any of their Salesforce work? No. Okay. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But ChatGPT is like the big thing. When people hear generative AI, they think ChatGPT, and that's a tool that uses it, but it's not the only one. So it's important that we know the difference between these two things, because based on our use case and based on what we want to do with Einstein one of these might be a better choice than the other. I just want to make sure everybody makes sense from that. So with generative AI and with predictive AI, what we want to understand is there's some principles that we want to look at when we're developing AI. The big thing, if anybody else was at Thanksgiving dinner and talking about AI at the table, the big thing everybody thinks is Terminator 2, or they think that AI is going to put everybody out of jobs or work and nobody's going to have a job anymore going forward. And yes, Terminator 2 is a movie, and yes, AI can be used to do more things, but really what we want to use AI for is we want to make AI safe and inclusive for everybody that's using it. So as people who will be creating these AI applications or working with AI or building these data sets and models, we want to make sure that we're using 5 key principles. And these key principles are actually provided by Salesforce. Again, like Fozzie says, trust me, it's important to know the basic commands. Read that article and make sure that you know all of the different aspects. And it goes more in depth on it. But essentially, developing AI that's responsible, that has accountability, that's transparent, that's empowering, and it's inclusive. And really the 5th one there about inclusivity is really big point about AI as far as for how you want to develop it. Whether you're developing it as a part of Einstein 1, or taking data from a source that's being generated through AI and bringing that into Salesforce. Sometimes you can have data that is only for a select set of people or is not asking the right questions. For example, sometimes it may leave out, or it may not consider gender identity. It may not necessarily consider race, creed, nationality. If that's not put into your overall data set, it could cause bias and other issues with your AI as you're developing it. So following these principles and thinking about that as you're talking with your customers or your businesses about what you want to do with AI is a really important tenet that I want to make sure everybody knows about before we go on. So let's look at the next slide. And now we're going to talk about a random walk through things I didn't know about Einstein 1. And this is where we start to get into what's actually included with Einstein 1. The big thing I want to make sure everybody understands is that there is a prompt builder that's available with Einstein 1. And the link that Fozzie has down there about being prompted when my dad gets food out of the fridge, that actually takes you to a little bit more about prompt builder and about some of the different tools. And there's a really good trailhead that's also linked off of that site to help you learn a little bit more about the prompt builder as well. But prompts are essentially the questions that we ask of AI. Where maybe if you've used ChatGPT, you want to summarize different information about a specific article. Or in some cases, maybe you want to generate questions you can ask about something. My wife is a customer experience specialist at a company, and she just had to do interviews with a bunch of different builders, and they were struggling coming up for different questions. We put the question, ask 20 questions to different builders about sustainability into ChatGPT. She got 20 of the best questions ever. I was a hero because she got out of an hour of doing work, and with a little bit of changes, she was able to present it to her boss and the team, and those are the ones they're using going forward. That's the power of what you can use with prompts and being able to develop those different things. The prompts in the prompt builder, these are going to be included as out-of-the-box capabilities of Einstein 1. So if your client or your company is using Einstein 1, you'll be able to use an out-of-the-box prompt builder to be able to help and kind of augment the prompts that you want to create as you're working with the Einstein 1 platform. I know I've said a lot so far. Just want to pause there, see if there's any questions, if this is making sense, or if this is still way too high up for everybody. Good. Okay. Seeing nodding heads. If you need the sugar rush, please feel free to get some or another drink. I'm not offended. I just want to make sure everybody's staying happy as we go through this. All right. So you have your prompt builder. We also talked about co-pilots earlier, right? And some people think co-pilot, that's the guy on the plane who doesn't really fly it, but kind of navigates or does things. Yes, that's a co-pilot, but that's not the co-pilot that we're talking about here. If you saw Dreamforce, you might have seen the Einstein co-pilot available when they were doing the presentation, but they essentially had a customer service rep on the phone. And that rep was walking through with the customer addressing an issue. And the co-pilot is using that generative AI or Gen AI to be able to make different recommendations. So the customer in the video says, I'm having a problem with my order. I wanted to get it in this color. The generative AI on the back end was looking up and seeing why they were having a problem. And it turned out it was out of stock and it recommended a different product altogether. These are the types of co-pilots that you'll have an ability to leverage and kind of be able to kind of combine your data that's in Salesforce with external data. So the best way I can think about that is I used to work for a manufacturing company, and they had products that would get shipped all around the country, all around the world. They would be leveraging some of their data that they have in Salesforce along with shipping data from a logistics system or from SAP if they wanted to look at orders and invoices. They could now take something like a co-pilot, and when they have an angry customer on the phone, they could say, oh, we actually know that truck is about an hour out from where you're at. And by the way, we have some extra product that you need on that shipment. We'll send it over to you. That's a much more powerful conversation that you're developing with these co-pilot things in real time. And again, you'll see kind of some more information and that video that they did on that link that I included. But like Fozzie says, think about it as having a buddy when you go for a walk. The co-pilot's there with you. It's to make their job easier so the support rep can handle a bigger volume. So the salesperson can focus on the people who are ready to buy and not necessarily just make calls or work with random people going forward. So it's using the intelligence of the person to drive with the technical capabilities that you'll have on the platform. Another feature of Einstein 1, we talked earlier about Data Cloud. Data Cloud can not only connect your different clouds across the platform, but it speeds up the connectivity and it helps you to establish those systems of record, sources of truth. As a consultant, I don't know how many of you have had pain points in this room, but when I ask clients, where's your source of truth? Sometimes it's blank stares and trying to figure that out. So Data Cloud allows you to master data and take in different data sources to combine all those data sets and give you a unique identifier. I apologize, I did want to put together a little thing on Data Cloud tonight. I just ran out of time this week. So I did include a little trailhead that kind of walks you through how you can use Data Cloud, how you can explore some of the 360 audiences capabilities, and make sure that you can really learn how that part's going to be good. Because when we talk about AI and we talk about Einstein 1, it's only as good as your data, right? It's not that you want to have data that's siloed, because you can train your AI on that data, but it's not your comprehensive data set, right? So if your data is not good, you're not going to have AI that's very good, because it's going to be very limited in how they kind of work from there. So like Bozzy says, data's like my food. I only want the good stuff. So make sure to get the good stuff and use Data Cloud to be able to look at those things moving forward. So we talked a lot about what's included in Einstein 1. We talked about kind of the co-pilots. We talked about the prompts. We talked about Data Cloud. How do we start to build our case for using AI? Whether you're at a company level, maybe you're a BA, maybe you're an admin, maybe you're a consultant and your customer's saying, oh yeah, we're ready for AI, but they haven't thought about all those other steps yet. I want to give you the first question that you can ask anybody in any industry, in any role or things like that. If they want to use predictive AI, ask to look at the reports that they're using in their business today. If they say, well, we can't report on that yet, then you're definitely not going to be able to predict. So looking again at that data, looking at their strategy, and again, I've included a little playbook here, which has a whole bunch of other information around that, but this is going to help with building out your prediction models, even if you're using things that are out of the box from Salesforce, like lead scoring or opportunity scoring. You might want to, help them think about what do they need. Are they tracking something in Salesforce? Is it coming from a different system? That's going to let you know if you need to look at things like Data Cloud, if you need to look at things like the Einstein trust layer to be able to bring in some of those different decisions that you make going forward. And now that you know kind of what's important to your stakeholders, you know what you want to report on, you know what you want to predict, like we talked about earlier, having that responsibility to be able to create that AI and take advantage of those different things is what's going to be very important as well. Again, another trailhead module on the creation of kind of artificial intelligence and what you want to look at. But from a perspective of working with your customer, it's really figuring out what is important in the short term, what can we track, and then what can we build toward. So creating that roadmap for them about how they get to Einstein AI. Everybody here familiar with the terminology of like crawl, walk, run? These are the types of things that you want to state with your customer as you're talking about AI. We definitely get that you want to run, and we want to help you get to run, but we need to be able to crawl first. We need to connect those data sources. We need to bring things together to kind of true up what that all looks like. So as we talk about the 7 habits of highly effective admins learning AI, there's some different concepts and some things that you can learn around getting started with artificial intelligence. So if you're looking and you're really considering what you want to do with Einstein 1, how you want to build it out, how you want to develop it moving forward, this trailhead on kind of getting started with artificial intelligence has 7 modules. So 7 habits, 7 modules, thought it would be connecting. Will definitely help you hone your skills. I actually took this course before I took my AI Associate Cert, which I'll talk about in a second. It was very helpful. It got me kind of thinking about things from not only a data perspective, but also in the realm of what are the good questions that I need to ask? What are the ethical considerations that we need to consider? We talked about the responsibility of AI. What are the ethical implications of using AI? So for example, I don't know if some of you saw, but recently Sports Illustrated posted an article that was written by AI. They had AI generate the whole article. And that's not necessarily the ethical issue. The ethical issue was they put an author's name to it. They made it look like a person actually wrote it, when in reality, the AI did it instead. And that was what they got a lot of the, I guess, feedback for is, if a person didn't write something, we don't want to give them credit for it. We want to make sure that if AI is generating something, especially if it's, something that could be incendiary or something that's sensitive, you definitely want to call out that AI can make mistakes. And having that kind of called out ahead of time is what you want to look at. So this module is really helpful if you want to kind of skill up your background and learn more about AI going forward. So whether you're here kind of as an admin, a BA, a consultant, developer, whatever your role is, office manager, new person to Salesforce, in Salesforce, I definitely recommend that everybody in this room get the AI Associate certification. If you're thinking about where Salesforce is going or what they're positioning with what AI can do, this is a great certification to get because number one, it's not a technical certification. You're not going to blow your mind up trying to remember, all the different technical aspects of Salesforce that go into it. But it's really going to teach you a lot about kind of what AI can do, what the capabilities are. It helps take away from some of that fear factor that we talked about earlier about Terminator 2 versus, people being out of jobs. It helps you have responsible conversations about it. It helps you learn about it and really how you can kind of play it into principle. So I took the associate certification right before Thanksgiving. I passed on the first attempt. It's not a hard exam by any means, but for any level of professional, if you want to learn more about AI, this is a great certification. Again, linked off to the trailhead in here. I will say I did use a training course tool, not focused on course, but Salesforce Ben actually has some courses. And the one on the AI Associate was extremely helpful. It really summarized a lot of the different information. For those of you who can get reimbursed, it's less than $20. For those of you who can't, it's less than $20. So you can definitely pay for it and it shouldn't break the bank. But the certification itself, I think, is like, it was 40 questions and there's free retakes. So if you don't pass it for whatever reason, you can immediately take it again if you feel like you proved it. So definitely something I hope after this presentation, I at least see a couple people earning that cert because I would definitely recommend it. And like Fozzie says, almost as easy as getting a dog test. All right, so think and grow rich with your future skill set. So earlier we talked about a kind of AI in the realm of GPT. And for those of you who didn't know GPT, Generative Pre-trained Transformer. That's essentially what GPT stands for. And that's primarily what's being used in Chat GPT, but Salesforce also leverages Einstein GPT. So like we talked about with the co-pilots and helping to make those decisions and helping to look at some of those different things, there's additional capabilities within Einstein GPT that's going to allow you to combine your private org data in Salesforce with your public model data in other ways besides what you get out of the box from Salesforce. So this is where you're starting to develop maybe a GPT for a customer. Maybe they want to develop their own tool. I look at this type of functionality, and the first thing I thought of is, man, do I really need to have an experience cloud in the future? Because if I can do everything from one place and they can set it all up, do I really need to enable users? Do I need to send people somewhere? Or can I just have my GPT kind of answer questions, direct people, have them fill it out and go from there? Longer term, not short term for any experience cloud people, I think we're fine in the short term, but longer term, this might be a capability that can take over and do some things there. And Salesforce Ben had a really good article on this, so I linked out down here. But like Fozzie says, you can learn when I need to walk. Absolutely, we can learn when you need to walk. We can learn other things about you too to make your life as the end user easier. And as the admin or the BA or the person developing this technology, really giving you the ability to empower your customer so they almost have frictionless ability to check different things. I know we're all busy. If we could have somebody, log our case for us and update us when things are good and letting us know when it's closed without us having to do anything, this makes it a lot easier than somebody needing to do those manual inputs and get those things from there. So there's a lot more on this topic with Einstein GPT. I know I'm not doing it total justice here, but definitely check out the article as a first step to look through it. The reason I talk about GPT a lot, and the reason I asked it, because if you're not using things like Chat GPT in your Salesforce role, you're missing out. This is an example of me using Chat GPT just to kind of show off kind of a validation rule that I wanted to create. So back in the day, if I wanted to find this information and I didn't know, I would probably have to Google it and then maybe ask somebody, and then I would write it, and it would sort of do what I wanted it to, and then it wouldn't, and then I'd have to do something else to update it. All I did, you could see at the top, write a validation rule in Salesforce where a contact is missing an email address or a phone number when updated. And it gave me the formula. Gave me everything I need to do. It also allowed me to copy it. So if I want to copy and paste it, I could. I'm not saying you should. I would say you should check it and just make sure that what's coming out is good. But it also gives you the reason for why everything was created, why that function is being used, why those fields are recommended, what's going on here to be able to check those different things. And I know this is a basic use case example, but again, all I did was type one sentence at the top of that, everything else came up as generated from ChatGPT. So think about that. Maybe you want to come up with a proof of concept data model for a, I don't know, financial services customer or a bank, right? ChatGPT could help you do this. Or maybe you're stuck on what do I need to do to create, a flow in Salesforce. ChatGPT could give you some answers. By no means am I saying this is the ultimate cheat code. Like, this is not something you should just directly copy and paste. You should do your due diligence. But if this gets you 90% of the way there, this is something that will definitely change the way that we do admin work or the way that we look at different things. To me, when I saw this and saw this capability, the first thing I thought of is, why do I need an offshore person if I work in an offshore model, right? I don't have to pay anybody. I can just have ChatGPT do it, and I can do the other 10% of the work myself. Or if you're a seasoned admin, right? Like, what else do I need to look at when I'm doing some different things in Salesforce? And I apologize, I don't have ChatGPT up on my computer now, but we could type hundreds of different things in there for use cases in here. And I'm guaranteeing you, each one of you would get at least 90% of the way there with things that you're thinking about. So if you haven't signed up for a ChatGPT license, if you haven't thought about how Einstein 1 is going to impact you, definitely start to get familiar with this, because this is the ground floor. We talk about building up and learning more things. This is the time to get in and learn these things. And Salesforce, I know, says this every year. A couple of years ago, it was Process Builder, right? Everybody needs to learn Process Builder. This is the way of the future, till Flow came along. But ChatGPT is only going to iterate on top of it itself moving forward. So I already know there's a newer version than what I'm using. That's the one you have to pay up for. But eventually there will be a newer one on top of that. And, with the kind of things that we're looking at from a ChatGPT perspective here, it's great to see what it can do and how it can help you moving forward. One thing that was eye-opening for me is I asked ChatGPT what the recommended certifications are for somebody who's at my experience level, and I didn't have a couple of those. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm not qualified. ChatGPT can be me. But you could definitely use ChatGPT to figure out some problems instead of having to search through the Trailblazer community, having to reach out to a resource. Maybe even, just as a good way to get ideas or to generate different things before you even go into a client. I've already used this to help build my agenda for tonight. It came up with not necessarily those titles, but what to talk through and what to look at as we went through. I've used this to generate questions, like I talked about earlier, for my wife, but I've used them for some of my client meetings as well. I had questions I didn't know about an industry that I was working with where I was trying to learn about how banks sell to banks. And I asked some questions in the ChatGPT, and it gave me a bunch. And they said, that was really great. I didn't think you knew that much about our industry. I was like, I didn't think I did either. So it was a good way to kind of help with everything. But whether it's writing validation rules or writing about best practices, this is a good thing to bounce off of. So I just kind of wanted to wrap up and get close to being done with things to think about with AI. Now, as far as for those of you who are in specialized industries, maybe you're in healthcare or financial services, and you're like, I can't do the ChatGPT thing. There's too many HIPAA violations, or there's federal protections on some of the different things in financial services. There are AI uses that are specialized for certain industries, and there are things that you want to think about specifically for those industries. I don't want to go through every industry tonight. Number one, I don't want to, again, put anybody to sleep. But number two, we just want to be mindful of the time and everything that we have here tonight. But I did write kind of a helpful blog article on this. This is my own article, so yes, self-promotion, I know. But if you want to think about how this impacts your industry, or how this could maybe lead to additional talking points about a specialized industry, you can take a look at our article, and we called out some things as far as for how they impact financial services and healthcare customers. But if your industry is outside of that, you can still use some of those tenets to help build your case as you're looking at it moving forward. So kind of to wrap up here tonight, like I said earlier, a copy of this presentation with all of the links that I had there will be sent over to Charlene. They'll be available on the KOP Force site. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want to get a copy of this, or if you have any additional questions on these things. Safe harbor, I might submit your question in the ChatGPT and let that answer, but if I do, that's okay. The main thing that I want to talk about, though, is with Einstein 1, with AI, with a lot of the topics that we spoke about here tonight, there's just a ton of different information. We're, like I said earlier, at the ground floor. So by no means take this as like tenet that this is everything that's going to be available in Einstein 1. We all, at least most of the folks in here, know Salesforce is going to have 3 releases per year. There's going to be additional things that come out. There's going to be new things by Trailhead DX next year for the developers. And then I'm sure by the following Dreamforce, there'll be additional things. I hope this inspires you, though, tonight to use this as a launch point for your journey with Einstein 1, with AI, and kind of looking at those things moving forward. So hopefully that helps everybody out. Awesome. Want to see if there's any questions or thoughts, comments. I hopefully didn't scare anybody here.
One comment I had is we do have a tool. So Metazoa Snapshot has been putting a lot of effort into AI, generative AI.
Mm-hmm.
And they have their own prompt builder. They have been leveraging this for upwards of 8 months or more now. So very quickly after it really caught on, Bill was already on it. So an interesting use for the ChatGPT functionality was, tell me what this Apex class does.
Mm-hmm.
That was fantastic. And it was amazing because we have some amazingly complex code in our system. And it was literally just, zoom, it grabbed it up and it said, here's exactly what it does. Gave you a full description, summary, broke out all the methods, broke out all the associated classes that maybe it's calling. It was just unbelievable. And it was like,
I both love that and I'm terrified by that at the same response. I love it because absolutely, like you said, if I have a piece of code and I'm not a developer and I throw it into ChatGPT, absolutely, all the different things you said, that all goes in there. It tells me what it did. It tells me, all the different things related to it. But on the other side of that, I could be throwing in proprietary client information into a publicly knowledge resource, and once ChatGPT consumes that, they're not going to get rid of it. They're just going to build off of that going forward. So I would be really, like, if it's Metazoa's internal data and you're okay with that, that's fine. That's just part of that responsibility angle that I was talking about. But be very careful putting in client information to something like a GPT, because it will then use that and potentially when we talk about like financial services and healthcare, if you're putting in data that shouldn't be sourced like that, that can open up a whole other can of worms. Yeah, so I love the idea, Andrew. I just want to ground us in making sure that, I'm going to throw my whole org's code in here and let's see what everything does. Yep. And then all of a sudden we're getting a call that, hey, our competitors have all this, tribal knowledge that we have. So yeah, that's one of the tenets we just want to be careful with. But I love that you were able to use it to decipher and figure things out.
Yeah, it was pretty powerful.
Nice. Go ahead, Sarah.
So I want to make sure I understand this. Einstein will be looking, what is the data that Einstein's looking at? It's just looking at the data within Salesforce or Data Cloud or whatever you have within.
The Einstein trust layer will look at all of your data. So if it's just Salesforce, right? If you're not integrated with anything, not connected to it, yes, your answer is right. Many customers may have data from other sources. I talked about SAP earlier, the logistics tool that we were using at my manufacturing company. If they're integrated and that data makes it into Salesforce or makes it into a tool like MuleSoft or some other tool that works with the data, as long as it can get to that data in the Einstein trust layer, that will be all the data that it can look at. So it doesn't have to sit in Salesforce. It could also sit on like a big object, for example. So something outside of Salesforce, but Salesforce kind of has that big object. Everybody familiar with big objects? Okay. So if it has that connectivity, then yes, it can pull it in there. But in a vacuum of just Salesforce, yes, it would just look at your Salesforce.
But it's looking in the Salesforce.
In the connected architecture, yes, absolutely. And between multiple clouds as well, right? So for anybody here who has experience with Marketing Cloud has some different nuances than like Sales Cloud and Service Cloud. So you might be pulling in somebody who's got a Marketing Cloud user record or contact record versus a sales or service contact record. You need to be able to connect those two different things. And that trust layer uses the power of Data Cloud to be able to connect them and then leverages the Einstein capabilities against all of that data set. Again, I know this is super high level for December and late at night, but I hope that makes sense. It is.
One of my main clients was going to take a crack at service UPT, big service organization, call center users, but they as we started kind of going through the vetting process, all right, cool, is this going to be a fit for us now? We started getting into data governance and data cleanliness, and we realized that, like you said earlier, if you can't report on it, you can predict it. To me, it was like, if you can't look at it, you can't have AI try and like make generative decisions based off of it that makes you physically ill to look at. So that was kind of their experience, and they realized they opened a can of worms. It was, in some ways it was good because it was kind of the onus for us to make sure that we were helping them get in and clean the dirty data. But if you have any guidance on, like, if your data isn't the cleanest, like, can you still go on this journey, or do you kind of have to really like take this opportunity to clean shop as much as you can and then start opening some of these, especially generative AI doors?
Yeah, great question. So the latter, right? You want to have your data as pristine as possible when you're building and training your model. You may eventually get to your point when you're using AI or when you're pulling things together for Einstein 1 as you move forward, where your data knows to separate bad data or duplicative data or things like that. But if you're doing something for a client, data should really be your first step in any AI project, right? So if the data is dirty, if it's clean, if it's biased, if the data is structured but it's gapped, meaning there's different things that are missing, whether it's user entered or integration related or whatever that is, all of that needs to be cleaned up before you even have the AI conversation. Because what you're going to do is you're going to ingest, depending on if you're using predictive AI or generative AI, thousands, potentially millions of different records. If those records are incomplete or they start to have different other aspects, which again, the AI associate course really talked about that, but other aspects of things that are missing, this is really where you want to make sure that if you don't have that, you could cause bias, you could cause other types of things in the data set that you're building out from there. So I would definitely say to your client that we need to do this as a data project. We need to clean this up, we need to connect it. And when we feel that it's in a good spot, that's when we start to be able to leverage the AI capability. Because if you train your model with good data, you're setting up good outcomes for yourself, whether it's predictability or the generative capabilities for whatever you want to generate. And again, generative AI isn't perfect. So if you're using imperfect data or bad data from the start, it's always going to make it less perfect or less good as you build your model and use it moving forward. And what good is an AI model if nobody can use it, or they use it but they don't get the results they're looking for?
I really like that example that came out about Apex class summarization and all that. It seems like the big point you wanted to highlight was the fact that those have retention policies in those GPT models. I did hear that the Einstein trust layer has 0 retention, and that's like one of the big selling points. Will we have the expectation that you would be able to do something like what we just talked about, summarizing Apex flows, metadata within Einstein GPT? Like, is that something that they're sounding like they're going to be rolling out or something like that? Or is it really focused on more data than the metadata, I guess?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think it's both. I'm not trying to be ambiguous by saying that, but I think there are a lot of things that Salesforce has invested to kind of look at kind of how they want to build their AI models out. And as far as for your example, that's a perfect call out as far as for not storing information or not keeping proprietary information, because that's what Salesforce chooses to do with their customers' data. With a tool like ChatGPT or other GPT tools that are out there, you're kind of at the mercy of whatever company, whether it's OpenAI or Microsoft or Google just announced an AI tool today. You're kind of at the mercy on whatever they want to do. They may say that they're not going to store your different information, but we all know there's black tab things in the back that if people really wanted to get to, they could. And if especially for-profit companies have a way to make money off of it, 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to be able to. So I would just be mindful before you're plugging things into like a ChatGPT, what the ramifications are, especially if there's sensitive information going in there. With Salesforce, I would say that I would trust things if they're staying within Salesforce. Where I would have concerns are, going back to Celia's example, if we're integrating things into Salesforce, whether we're calling out and bringing it in, or we're just getting that information and pulling it in, and then we're running it through some sort of Einstein trust layer, what does that do to the information if it's going back to the external system? You know what I'm saying? Does it have any ramifications, maybe not so much from a predictive AI perspective, but from a generative AI perspective. If I'm generating, let's just say, some sort of imageography that's now going out to a public website and there's proprietary information in there, does that cause any sort of issue moving forward? Again, I definitely can't answer all these questions, but what I would say is these are things that you want to be mindful of before you just tell a client, yeah, we can do that. And then you build it. And if it's not built responsibly, does it cause legal issues? Does it cause safety issues? Does it cause a number of other things? I really like to go back to the Jeff Goldblum line in Jurassic Park. Just because you could do something doesn't mean you should. So just think about that as you're kind of exploring. And again, talking about the responsibility with AI, the ethics of AI, these are the things you want to talk to your customers about or talk to your businesses about before you just start building out a model and away you go. Because that's where, not that we're going to get to Terminator 2, but that's where other issues start to come. I hope that helps.
Yeah. Okay.
Anybody else? All right. Well, we do have no other questions. So again, like I said at the top, thank you again for being here. I know this is a very meaty topic for 5:50 p.m. on a Wednesday. I hope you all got something out of it. I do have a few things here for the holiday season to celebrate. So I just want to ask a few questions. If you get the question right, you can come up here and pick a book. And you can pick whatever you want. So whoever gets it in the order that we have, go from there. I'm going to let Charlene be the judge. So if we see multiple hands go up, Charlene, just tell me who you think was first. Okay. Okay. All right. First question. So we talked about AI tonight. We talked about 2 types of AI. What are the 2 types of AI? Who'd you see, Charlene? Andrew?
Andrew? I was close.
I think you was before.
Okay, because I saw his hand.
And then I went
She did
down.
what she
I was like,
could.
I'm not that close.
Okay. Andrew.
It was gently than predicted.
You got it. So I got 4 business books up here. Please feel free to come up and grab one. Unfortunately, you're now out of the running. So take whatever book that you want moving forward. All right. So you saw pictures of my dog Fozzie on numbers of the different slides here. So if you knew nothing else about AI, how many pictures of Fozzie was in my slide?
Is it the closest without going over?
It's the closest without going over. All right.
I'm going to say 6.
That's close, but it's not on point. Anybody else want to guess? Yes.
4.
4. No, I'm sorry. Barb's ahead of you. Yes.
9.
9. Very close. Almost there. You're the leader in the clubhouse. Yeah.
I was gonna say 10.
You're going to, oh, so you're going to play the $1 game. Go. Yes.
There you go.
Yes, it was 10. So Celia got 10.
You got it.
Okay. So Celia, feel free to take whatever book that you would like. So during my presentation, we talked a little bit about ChatGPT. We talked about some of the different things that were on the screen. I showed an example of building our validation rule. GPT, though, is an acronym. What does GPT stand for?
Generative pre-trained transformer.
There you go. Congratulations.
I've heard that a million times.
Somebody was paying attention. Reading all the words. Okay. All right. So that's 3. We'll wait for Celia to pick. all of these books, by the way, I've read, and they're all pretty good. So I think you can use them. I have a favorite, but I don't want to say the one that's my favorite and have somebody take it out. All right. Last question that I have here on kind of the different background. We talked about some of the different things that you can do to skill up. And I talked about there was a really good trailhead about learning about AI. And I mentioned how many modules were in it. Barb?
7.
7.
Mhm.
There you go.
Wow.
7 modules, Barb. So you get the last book that we have going forward. So thank you all very much. I know this was a big topic to kind of go through, but I appreciate everybody taking the time here. And thanks to the team at CRM Science for hosting and allowing me to present.